What do you think of this blade?
I think it's a half gram heavy on the back end.
In our faith, you keep what you kill. Are you familiar to me? Have we met on some distant field?
You'd think I'd remember.
You'd think I would too.
Take him before the Quasi-Deads.
There now. That is just perfect. The more you resist them, the greater the damage will be.
On you one. You brought us. On you one.
Interesting breeder.
Making entry. This won't take long. We've entered his neocortex. The reading.
Regress.
Scanning fresh memories. Thoughts of someone called Jack.
She went to prison.
Now we find thoughts of an elemental.
The one race that would slow the spread of necromongers.
Furians.
Furians.
Where does he come from? Who are his people? These are the things I need to know.
We find energy.
You must settle your past.
We find Furian energy.
For all of us.
It's Furian. Furian. Furian survivor.
Look at our world. At the graves of those who didn't escape 30 years ago. There is no future until we settle our past. For all of us who bear the mark.
Kill the Furian. Kill the Riddick. Kill the Riddick. Kill the Riddick. Kill the Riddick. Kill the Riddick.
Kill the Riddick.
Who is this man?
Find him! Whatever it takes. Find him!
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
And we'll finish off this section by looking at something I've gone into before, but again needs to be repeated because there's an important tie-in here, and it has to do with that schizophrenia, it has to do with that primal trauma, and it has to do with the difference between holarchy and hierarchy. We spoke about this last time we met, and it's worth going into again to emphasize it. As we said, all Masonic orgs work with this idea, right? Their symbolism shows you this. Their fraternity systems within the colleges and schools show you this. Their degree ceremonies within their own lodges show you this. The architecture, as we'll see in a minute, shows you this. And that is the perfect filtration, percolation system used by these lodges to make sure that good men don't get to steer the ship of state. Their systems, the shamanic systems, was to make sure that the scum didn't rise to the top. Because that's the shaman's job, is to watch and police the children and the adults to see where the pestilence is. This was one of their great roles, by the way. The Druids were very good at it. Once you remove those guardians, those keepers of truth and wisdom from society, well, then you're in severe problem. You have severe problems. This is what also happened during the witch burnings and all of these other genocidal acts. And then by the creation of this hierarchical model, you're allowing the impure to rise to the top, and you're screening them step by step to make sure that their conscience, what we call conscience, is slowly and slowly compromised, or that even their physical life is compromised. There's ways that this is done. We'll look at that a little bit later on. In the Architects and Control, we went again into a definition of psychopathy in order to understand all of this, and look at it a little bit different than the rest of the world's psychologists, because there's many definitions of this. And I was very concerned that in all the definitions that do exist of psychopathy, very little has to do with anything to do with historical trauma. This part has been left out by philosophers and psychologists alike. But I think it's very, very important. And it ties into this. Now, if we look at some of the symbolism, you'll see that great efforts have been put into designing cities and, state buildings, colonial buildings. Here's Buckingham Palace seen from the air. And there you can very clear, it's upside down, but you can clearly see the pyramidical aspect there. Not that pyramids, their shape is any negative, any more than a triangle is negative. It's just that this means something. It symbolizes the hierarchy. Here's Washington, D.C., you see. Again, it's Buckingham Palace from the air. A total Egyptian pyramid concept. Here's Hampton Court, which is not far away. Another elite estate, deliberately designed on that motif. Here's Canberra. The same idea. You're finding this cropping up a lot. Here's the ancient, not the ancient, but during Nazi Germany, this was the Nazi, it was meant to be a supposed Nazi headquarters, designed specifically by Himmler to be a pagan shrine, and also a settlement for elite Nazis, Wewelsburg Castle in Germany. The same motif, the same pyramidical idea. Or it can be in a different form, not quite pyramidical, but for instance like here, the headquarters of the EC, you see. It can be this sort of Tower of Babel effect. But even obelisks, all sorts of statues. And the idea is that hierarchy, basically, I've always said it's a definition of psychopathy. Because it's almost it's a hallmark of psychopathy. Those people who see the world in hierarchical terms are working from a certain level of dementia. It's not to say that hierarchies don't exist. But when your ideological model of the world is hierarchical, then we enter into lots of problems. And so when we decode the symbolism, we find out there's an awful lot of emphasis on this. The idea that there was some disorder in the past. A new world order implies an old world disorder. Even to talk about order, right? Talks about imposing something on something that's disorganized or disorderly. And Masons use even the symbol of the beehive. You'll have symbols of the tiara, of the mitre that the popes wear. This symbol of hierarchy can be found in many, many levels, symbolically. Joel Bacan says that democracy is necessarily hierarchical. It requires that the people, through the government they elect, have sovereignty over corporations, not equality with them. Now he's talking about in the corporate milieu. If corporations and governments are indeed partners, we should be worried about the state of our democracy, for it means that government has effectively abdicated its sovereignty over the corporation. And corporations, in his work, he goes in to show that they are psychopathic. If you read his book, The Corporation, he's talking about corporations being psychopathic. One of the commenters on this kind of a certain psychopathy was Nikolai Machiavelli, and he has to say that a prince, and this is somebody aspiring for political power, ought to have no other aim or thought, nor select anything else for his study than war and its rules and discipline. For this is the sole art that belongs to him who rules, and it is of such force that it not only upholds those who are born princes, but it often enables men to rise from private station to that rank. So he's encouraging the elites to think in psychopathic ways. He goes on to say that from this arises the question whether it is better to be loved rather than feared. For feared or feared rather than loved. It might perhaps be answered that we should wish to be both. But since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. There's your psychopathy. There's your conscious, deliberate decision-making and advice. Sorcery, it's specifically then a paraphrase Carlos Castaneda's Don Juan, who says, as a sorcerer, you are aware that you have absolutely no control over or of anything, but you have to act as if you do. Now what that really means, interpreted, is mean that you have no control over yourself, which is the point I've been making. The psychopath has no control over their own selfhood. Their own inner republic is in a state of total chaos. And therefore now they need these very sort of stabilizers in their own life, and then you just continue by imposing those on the world outside you. The same point is brought up by Thomas Hobbes, the philosopher. In the 16th century, he said that the state of peace among men living side by side is not a natural state. The natural state is one of war. And there's whole schools of philosophers who believe that, and many schools of politicians. And of course it's an ancient ideology. The old idea of crushing and subduing nature is born out of this idea that man in his own brain imagines himself the highest of the species and all of this nonsense. We also have it come about, this whole phallic idea, the ethiophalic hierarchical idea also comes about in patriarchism and the whole idea of phallocracy, the patriarch. Another manifestation is the idea that you rise yourself by pushing others down, right? You can't really rise yourself morally, spiritually, intellectually. So you remain exactly where you are and make sure that everyone beneath you is artificially pushed lower. This is how the tyrant works. And then they have this aura of superiority. Whereas the truly spiritual, superior man develops on his own, regardless of what others are doing. This is impossible to these psychic invalids. Demeaning nature, demeaning femininity. All of this is part of it. The treatment of animals and so on. Again, it wouldn't be a problem. Only thing is that they want their infection to spread. They're not just comfortable, as we see from these quotes, being that way themselves. They must make the whole world as wretched and as disorderly as they are themselves within their minds. This must never be forgotten for an instant. Now, you can't come out and tell people that that's what you're going to do, so you come out as the wolf in sheep's clothing to give them all these promises. First, you create the problems, like we've heard, right? Create the chaos, create the mayhem, and then bring in the idea of artificial order and artificial control. And you will buy into it if you have the same infection within. So it's all about psychic and psychological immunity. Nothing to do too much with politics, even though you can't rule our political action out altogether. And here is the perfect statement that summarizes what we've been talking about. This idea that the psychopath craves this artificially imposed order. As George Bush said, George Herbert Walker Bush, he said, out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure. Today, a new world is struggling to be born, a world quite different from the one we've known, a world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle. When you decode this psychologically, it's unbelievable what kind of specimen is revealed underneath it. If you just think about it as being something that's happening in external theater of the world, then you don't have the understanding at all. Of course, these people are the self-deceived. They're the ones running around literally now believing that the order they have can be imposed on all the rest of us. But one must ask a simple question: how can anyone who's in a state of inner chaos ever imagine that they're going to realize or attain social harmony and justice, you see? It's just not possible. In fact, recall the quote by Goethe, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who said that he is happy as well as great, who needs neither to obey nor command in order to be something. Now, Ayn Rand, the philosopher, the Russian philosopher, said that still another kind of soul is revealed by the man who takes pleasure, not in achievement, but in destruction. What? Pleasure in destruction? Well, there you have it. The sadism, the narcissistic pleasure, the psychopathy. Not in achievement, but in destruction, whose action is aimed not at attaining efficacy, but at ruling those who have attained it. The soul of a man so abjectly lacking in self-value and so overwhelmed by terror of existence that his sole form of self-fulfillment is to unleash his resentment and hatred against those who do not share his state. Those who are able to live as if by destroying the confident, the strong and the healthy, he could convert impotence into efficacy. Erich Fromm, the psychologist, in his fantastic work Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, says that the sadistic person is sadistic because he is suffering from an impotence of the heart, from the incapacity to love the other, to make him respond, to make oneself a loved person. He compensates for that impotence with the passion to have power over others. Since self-assertive aggression enhances the person's capacity for achieving his aims, its possession greatly diminishes the need for sadistic control. So it's about power, control, or love and compassion. Fromm goes on to say, the intensely destructive person will show a front of kindliness, courtesy, love of family, of children, of animals. He will speak of his ideals and his good intentions. But not only this, there is hardly a man who is utterly devoid of any kindness or any good intention. If he were, he would be on the verge of insanity. Hence, as long as one believes that the evil man wears horns, one will never discover an evil man. It sounds very simple on paper, but we vote them in time and time again. Here it is in black and white. Prince Philip is quoted in the media as saying, in the event I am reborn, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation. I mean, I'm not making this up.
No. We'll never get it out now.
So certain are you? Always with you what cannot be done. Do you nothing that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No. No different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
I can't. It's too big.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us. And binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
You want the impossible. I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
Hey, you epic being, welcome. Under Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, Servant of Truth with you once more. Thank you as always for allowing me to be a part of your journey, and I hope you're feeling amazing and epic and really loving being on our amazing Earth Mother, despite everything going on and stuff like that. So I always, as always, want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey and investing any amount of your precious peak awareness time, alright? That time that you've invested so much to gaining the level of awareness to even contemplate these sort of things, being so rare in the human populace at the moment and stuff. And perhaps like me, you're pushing harder than ever before. You're not taking your foot off your awareness, self-development, self-growth accelerator, when perhaps so many people are. They're enjoying the reality for what it is. You know, my personal attitude and feeling of things at the moment, as I've said, if you've gone through my videos, I'm going to try and get through things pretty quick. I don't know how much light I've got and stuff. I've got some pretty cool stuff to say because I've been sitting on it for this week, and I was umming and ahhing whether to do a video, and I just got really inspired because I feel I can put a lot together to help you appreciate your potency right now, which is what I've always known. I've tried to instill, but I'll do it in another way, that you might get a holy frack aha moment and really engage your infinite potential and things like I say, injustice anywhere is an injustice anywhere, and violation is our asset, and really empower and engage your multi-dimensional potency right now, even though you don't probably accept it, feel it, sense it, and think you should be perceiving in a different way than what you are at present, right? And yeah, just my feeling of things in the world, if you go back to the last 6-9 months and going back to, say, Emotional Mastery Part 8 or 9, where I did a test during the US election and I did the contrarian view, and I said there was going to be relief, and that in that relief, potentially a lot of people have let go of this sort of path, right? It's fascinating. And if you've ever done healing or being a healer and stuff like that, people in crises and stuff, there's a real purity of that and a real potency in it. And I talk about being in abundance or in survival mode with finances, and there's a very pure, you know, trying to make it through the day, get the nourishment, the food. There's total commitment in survival mode, and there's a purity in crisis, and when things are extreme, that's very motivational for people in their survival and the fear mode to get out of that, to find motivation. But you learn a lot about when things are good, right? And the truth of people are known sort of in many of these things, all right? So I feel like a lot of people we're always going to drop off because this sort of path is just an add-on to their lives, and I respect that, and I appreciate that. I totally understand the commitments and the demands of life these days with the inflation sort of war going on, and commitments and your responsibility. So if you're a parent and stuff like that, to me, as I've offered in many variables and constantly, I try not to say it too much. I'm not trying to bring me into it too much, but to be here, have totally let go of a lot of these things and committed relentlessly day in, day out for 17 years. I've given away a lot of life, a lot of the potential in this reality at this moment. Who knows what will happen in the future? Maybe I'll get back onto my book writing and stuff to explain all this stuff, because my mind is, I'm gone up like cogs at the moment. I'm seeing how it all fits together, and in all the videos I'm trying to instill that to not so much answer the questions, but just give you the data points so you get the aha moments yourself. I'm trying to teach at a very high level with everything I'm offering at the moment, and those that are coming through with sessions, I'm seeing it actually work, and it's really exciting because people that don't even know how aware they are, it's just spawning in them and stuff. And so I feel I'm not trying to put that commitment on to you or whatever and make it like I'm better than you or whatever. It's just been my nature to want to get to know all this stuff and want to get to the bottom of everything. And this video is going to be Amplify the Echoes Part 16, Navigating Between Universes at Play Part 2. So I offered that Part 15 a couple releases ago, and I got into a lot of the barrenness and nature and stuff. And really it's about feeling the subtleties, right? I offered a really cool clip from the TV series on Apple called Dark Matter, and I'm not sure what clips I'm going to offer here. The Emotional Mastery Part 10 was a big one to go through about fear and love state sort of thing, and the effect on your body and stuff. I said in that I was going to offer a Michael Design clip. I didn't offer it, so I might have offered it at the start here. I'm not sure about other clips or Asher stuff. I usually like to do this Amplify the Echo series of our soul's ancient truth, right? Of the vastness of our journey and the bigger scales of things. So this is going to be more about this time now, but also appreciating the vaster scales and your multi-dimensional potential, right? Because I know people have a lot of potential relative to what I've offered, and working with it, there's so much I appreciate that and what people go through, and even if they don't agree or like it and all these sort of things, or they feel shut down and all these sort of things, I'm going to offer this, right? And if you're going through that with my sovereignty declaration, I've been very generous of saying, yeah, I could be wrong and all this sort of stuff and blah, blah, blah. But what it comes down to is I'm going to be releasing a new version with some really cool components and with the DNA corruption sort of stuff that I've really got an appreciation of, right? And I don't know how much I'll get in this video relative to the light. I'm doing it quite late in my day, but I wanted to just get the basics and probably build on it, and we'll see what happens. I might get inspired in all other stuff and just totally move away, like I've said on so many videos, right? But the Echoes 15 was a really big release for me because we've worked out so much, and a few of the videos I've released of late have been easing off on the intensity and raising the bar and pushing really hard to give, particularly like the Love and Fear release I did in my last one, giving you the body mechanics of how your body tech might react to your interpretation of events, right? There was a lot of clips about fear and the effect of that and false energy appearing real and all those sort of things. Danger is a variable and reacting to that, but mastering yourself in any moment is all a foundation and component that I've always been about, right, with what I said. So a lot of the videos up until this point in recent times have been just to empower you on mastery of yourself, to be able to handle a lot of complex and perhaps overwhelming stuff, right? And realizing, in spite of that, as I've always said, like the vastness of all the stuff that's gone on and done to us, to me it's sort of a confirmation that we are superior, all right? And what is it that we're a threat to all this stuff? And what do they need us for, all right? And what happens if we engage that like that superiority and stuff? So I've got I've got a new mode for myself, right? And I call myself the Brat, right? And I'm Brat from Down Under. So I'm gonna go in Brunder mode, like annoy the shit out of frickin' so much with this, what I'm gonna say, alright? And the Down Under is Aussie, right? But maybe if you're not in the Southern Hemisphere and all that sort of stuff, alright, we can say the 3D 5 sense is under, alright? Under our infinite potential, right? So I'm going to invite you to embrace your Brunder mode, alright, with me on this, to absolutely piss off so much frickin' shit out there. I was just joking to myself, you know those, when you get those mallets, you go to circuses and you whack them and it goes up and it hits a bell sort of thing. I'm going to go full Brunder mode here and try and whack the shit out of annoy the crap out of Invader Bell and just set new records with this shit, alright? I just want to piss them fucking so much off by just the the codex of truth to see through all the shit, alright? Because I think I might finally get through to a lot of you with this, alright? So I think I've only got probably about 30 minutes of light, and I've got a busy day coming, so I have to be up, so I can't really make this too long, alright? So I'm going to get into this, okay? So what I want to do is just show you the awareness journey image up front, right? So this is the first one I sort of did a while back, right? It's a bit beaten up now, it got rained on and all this sort of stuff, but I feel I did a really good job of explaining things, right? And this is what it's like in our present time of trying to awaken to our infinite potential sort of thing, and then reverse engineering what's going on, going into the spiritual community that's a battleground, right? Setting us up for so much failure. Invaders like in superior situations, and you know, we've been wiped and we've never known so much, right? And I've said it countless sort of times, but this is like the metaphor of now, right? So there's a huge potential, we feel inferior and all this sort of stuff. We don't know, there's no sort of curriculum or methodology to get through everything because we're not even told what's going on, right? So that's what I've sort of created. So with my sovereignty declaration, I've invented my own basic healing modality, and it's based on thoroughness. I don't know if anyone in the world would do a session from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. or 11 p.m. till 8 a.m. sort of thing, with the ability to hold space and work at a high level for that whole time with an individual, and having no cost, right? Just clearing out the energy hygiene and engaging at a high level and sovereignty and all that sort of stuff. To me, I've worked out a way. I'm not saying it's the way, but it's evolved over many years, and it's taken me 5 years to get this. So I think I've done pretty well to discover all this in 5 years, right? And evade all the frackers in my epic Brunder mode. But anyway, like I'm just saying, this is the sort of the micro, because I'm going to get into macro, bigger timescale sort of thing, right? So if I go from here to the next one that I evolved, right? But just before I move on, it's all the dimensional levels, like the 3D 5 cents, and I'm going to refer to a lot of Asher basics because we've evolved from them, but they're good reference points, right? And a fair bit of her content as reference points, whether they're true or not, that's fine. I'm going to assume they're accurate because the early stuff we worked out was about 80% accurate and all this sort of stuff, right? Despite all the influences and stuff. And but the absence of the awareness of the invasion from the source level that I've offered many times, right? That's the variable that has had a corruption throughout everything that we've been disadvantaged by, right? So this is just, I've shared this many times, it's on my Instagram, right? Just the dimensional levels like 3D, 5 cents, 11.5D, 12D, 15D and 22D sort of thing. It's not so much in this one, but I'm going to move on to the evolved one now, right? So that one I did a couple of years ago. This one I did November last year. Thanks to operating with an epic ally out there, we worked out that light was actually going at us, right? And it's like, what the hell? Why is light attacking us? Long story short, we worked out light and dark was created by an anti-god level being, right? And I put all this in my release version of my sovereignty declaration, the full and complete ones, right? But dark was accessing light to get access to like this buffet of our codes, right? To get above the 15D, 12D, right? Because basically 12D, let's say from Asher perspective, is source. So the highest level, say the Anunnakis could get to. And Anunnakis were created as our nemesis to take out angelic humans, right? They created the pyramids and all this sort of stuff. I've got a lot to offer with Ash. I'm wanting to sort of out the off-world species and stuff like that, because, you know, why don't we know who created all the pyramids? Out of all the vastness of all the amazing sort of abilities, so to speak, of all the beings out there that seem to be know-it-alls of all stuff. They're just so vague on this stuff. You know why? Because they don't want to out themselves or who they're aligned to, okay? This stuff should be basic. Why can't we know it? Why is there ambiguity and vagueness? It's because they got vested interest because they were involved with the frackery going on, okay? You have to see that. And why do people encourage grid work with unhygienic people? You know? What are they hacking in? What are they using? What are they putting on Earth? And all this sort of shit, alright? The Akasha bullshit got wiped by Earth itself a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago now, alright? Anyone referring to that it's all related to inserting false memories and false data into us via our radio body that was installed from Earth and all this sort of stuff to derail us from the truth, okay? So it's just, this is all the crap that's been going on, okay? So what we found is Dark was able to get up to 22D and above, potentially, via using our codes. So I was busting people in my dream time, stealing codes and the backdoor sort of hacks. The backdoor network, it's all in GSF 37, a lot was in that, okay? But it's all in the sovereignty declaration that I released earlier in the year, alright? So if you want to go further in all this, but the backdoor hacking and all this sort of stuff, there's been so many variables, so difficult to discern and isolate and work out, let alone build a solution for, that it's just been an evolution and a chipping away, alright, to get to this point. And that's where working out the multiverses, like the overlay of the Invader and Pure Source and stuff, right, was so profound, let alone healing it October last year and about 2 or 3 months ago again, right? So this is just an evolved of the awareness journey, how difficult it's been, the energy hygiene, the weaponization, the targeting and all this sort of stuff, you know. Why has that been the case? Well, what I want to do is get into the bigger scales of why it has been so tough to get out of the 3D 5 cents and what we've been up against, all right, on another level, all right. So I'm just going to go to the pure source image, all right, to just do a reference of the 1 trillion years ago, and then I'll break it down from there. So if you've been around me for a while, I've shared this for quite a while, and it's an interpretation of the Invader overlay universe versus our pure source universe, right, that we've never known about, right? And in the last video I talked about temptation and fate and stuff like that, and I don't want to get into it too much, I just want to touch on it. I highly recommend going and watching Amplify The Echos Part 15 for all that content, right? But with all this understanding and appreciation, okay, there's still a lot not adding up, okay? And the whole comment about taking the foot off the pedal earlier, right, is that going back to the contrarian view that I offered relative to, say, the US election and stuff like that, to me there was always going to be relief because they want to maintain the structure, alright? So even if there's good and all that sort of stuff, there's, in my opinion, they're building the structures to continue all this, alright, in the background. So there's some nourishment being given that's disarming people from the relief of the abuse sort of setup that we were in, right? That's sort of like the settling for life sort of thing, I feel, right? So all the demands and all that sort of stuff, I offered the extreme nature of things was highly motivational, and so that extreme in different areas of the world might be let off. So the disarming and the retreat and the focusing on the basics sort of thing. If you watch the fear video, fear and love state video, emotional mastery part 10, it's all in there, sort of thing, about the retreating and the limiting of data variables and all that sort of stuff, right? But the reason why I'm showing this is the reference point going back to 1 trillion years, right? So the last images I showed were about the now, right? This is taking back to the scales of the vastness, alright? as a reference point. So the two extremes of the in the now, this life, versus the overall structure of the universe sort of thing, okay? And all that's gone on and all that's aligned to the invaders, like the ETs and off-worlders and all that sort of stuff. It's literally like the Empire, right? I highly recommend watching Andor as well on Disney. Second season is outstanding. The whole thing is epic, right? But it's a metaphor of like what we've potentially been up against, alright? But I'm just going to move on because it's getting dark, alright? But I hope that's a good reference now, because I'm going to go into a bit more. I'm going to use the 300,000 year sort of reference, okay? And I'm going to offer some really, really amazing stuff. So I'm going to try and make this pretty simple, alright? So the bottom is the time. I've used the 350,000 year reference, alright? Which is still pretty vast. There's two lines. Asher said we lost 12D and went to 10D at about 216 BC, alright? So I'm just going to use those sort of things as references. So there's 12D going to 10D, alright? That red line, and then there's 25,000 years ago, the Ionian and the steep decline of dimensional awareness and stuff to the 3D 5 cents, alright? So, and the red line is like the overall awareness, consciousness journey and stuff in all that, alright? There's ups and downs and all that sort of stuff. So we've all potentially had past lives in this. I'm just using that reference to that marker point. I just want to include it here, and the Ioni sort of as references. But say the ability to have an awareness was faster, and then they locked down Earth and stuff, so the potential was limited to 10D sort of thing, alright? So I'm just going to use the Asher sort of reference and stuff. So there's 3D, I have some 3D, 5D, 7D later. There's 10D, 11.5D. So the invaders can get to 11.5D, alright? So if I've included the Michael Desarian clip at the start, which I'm probably going to do, right, because it's pretty cool, because it gets into how the forces in control, want to limit us to accommodate into their reality sort of thing, their limits, right? They push us down to be superior. It's a very potent metaphor for what I'm going to be saying here, alright? So just appreciate those numbers and stuff. I'll aim to get these images on my Instagram as well. I've said I'm going to do that with many images, but I'll look to get these done, alright? So it's a metaphor of the awareness journey overall and our experience on Earth over a vast amount of time than history will accept, alright? To get down to this. Like it's been war, alright? And a constant battle, alright? If you've really appreciated the Asher stuff, okay? And I've said what I feel about Asher, and we've looked into all that sort of stuff, but I still honor and appreciate her, alright, of what she's offered over the last 20 years, okay? But I stick to the earlier stuff because it's good reference in the species, and they're still at play, alright? That's why there's obfuscation and never being talked about, okay? But yeah, I hope you appreciate that, alright? To just set a baseline, because I'm going to build on this, okay? But they're just some events and what it's more than likely been aligned with dimensional levels and stuff like that, okay? So this is the second one. So with that baseline that I've offered, alright? And this is all getting into the violation is our asset, injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, but the corruption and the DNA pollination of invader DNA codes and corrupting us so we don't have pure source, pure earth, authorized DNA sort of thing, right? At the start of the year we worked out that we could engage a process with Earth Mother where she reanimates all of her DNA to her authentic, pure lineages that she wanted for us, alright? But everything I'm saying in this and everything about the Sovereignty Declaration, it's about you engaging it. It's not us imposing and doing stuff at a big level. You have to accept it and integrate it. It's like the maximum respect of your free will, right? You're the one that gives it the go ahead to be done, and in my best method of doing that is engaging it via the sovereignty declaration and just seeing how much you've been up against, alright? So as I said, the shutdowns and all the avoidance and stuff is an indicator of you being influenced by variables that do not want you to do it, alright? And getting into all that I'm offering here is a reason why, okay? So this is the second image relative to that first baseline, alright? Of the metaphor of our overall and individual journeys as a consciousness on Earth, alright? So in this is all about, say, past lives, alright? And it's vastly more complicated than this, but it's an indicator of, just to get a appreciation of the vastness of our journey and what we might have been and stuff like that. This just assumes your 3D 5 sense here, right? But on the soul level, you've potentially been vaster and different, and you might have parallel souls. You might be a mass incarnate like these Invader mass incarnates, right? But we've been grinded down to being what we are now, so we're only, say, 3D 5 sense, okay? And we've been wiped. You know, there's no offering of our past life awareness and stuff like that innately in us and all these sort of things, okay? With all that awareness journey in that I showed earlier on, okay? So just appreciate that the potential you've had past lives and been through a lot of these things like the Ariani massacre and what went on 208,216 BC plus had higher existences and stuff, alright? But this is just to give you a metaphor of what your journey as a soul has been like on Earth for the last 350,000 years, alright? So I'm just going to move on because it's getting dark. I've probably got about 10 or 15 minutes, okay? So this is the third one, alright? And this is a evolution of that one to past lives, alright? And this, I've included a single multi-dimensional being, alright? That's an invader-aligned being, alright? So I've said it's below 11.5D, alright? And it's above 10D. So just imagine at that level, you have an awareness of the whole timeline, alright? You can see everything and everyone, alright? And say you as an individual, and just imagine there's countless multi-dimensional beings that have that advantage over us now, alright? So, say for instance, I might have dealt with many shards of one, alright, or many, alright? They've all hated the Brunda mode that I've always had, alright? My one of my advanced skills is being mega annoying, alright? So I'm using Bat superpower here, like amplified to a 1000D%, alright? 1000D infinite potential %, okay? Like I said, I'm going for records of pissing off invaders, alright, on that circus game, alright? In this carny bullshit world that they've created for us, okay? Let's say, for instance, alright, imagine if a very high level dimensional being, like a 10D being, is incarnated soul shards with high awareness, alright? And you see here there's some things go backwards and forwards through time, alright? Well, high dimensionals, it's beyond time, so you can see everything, so you can target the threats through time and all that sort of stuff, right? So you might have been aware at a high dimensional level in the past, but we've been grinded down, particularly since that 12 to 10D disconnect us from source. And so we've been very limited because a lot of our talents potentially only engage above that. So we're being hindered at a massive disadvantage and then grinded down over relentless pillaging and targeting and the war that's been that we don't really want to be involved in, to being in this awareness journey now, not even knowing it, alright? But so this is just a metaphor of the multi-Ds, how they work, how they target us, how they know us, and our disadvantage. Right? But I'm going to flip it all. Right? So I'm just going to move on. I'll look, if I need to elaborate on these more in the future, I will. Right? But just appreciate, this is the metaphor of potentially being up against countless vastly superior beings and not knowing it and suffering so much. That, along with sort of the pure source corruption from the invasion at the get-go sort of thing. We've never had a fair fight and all that. And we've had to retreat and grind back down and defeat after defeat, soul traumas and all this sort of stuff, which has all been seeded through, making us feel inferior, also inadequate and all that sort of stuff, right? Corruption of our DNA and all sorts of stuff, right? So I'm just going to move on to the next one. So this, I'm trying to introduce the temptation and the corruption of our DNA lineages, alright? So say the hunting down of codes to create the Leviathan body tech and all that sort of stuff. You know, we've known about all that stuff in the past, right? What I've worked out, a massive variable, right, is that the corruption in our DNA lineages is playing out now to derail us, alright? So that gravitation, what I've done here is the invader overlay, alright, and the pure source behind it, alright? So this gets into the navigating between universes at play sort of stuff, right? And why people might gravitate to paths that aren't altruistic and self-serving and all that sort of stuff. To me, the corruption in the lineages that we all have had to endure, and we all may have, including me and all this sort of stuff, it's not only just grinding us down and corrupting purity and cross-pollinating with invader off-world species, or, you know, thinking that they're better and all this sort of stuff. This is like, I'm really discerning things like star seeds, alright? Like, as a woman, why would you want a consciousness from somewhere you don't know in yourself to gestate and give a life on Earth now, alright? To me, all the off-world stuff, the level of incarnation war that's gone on out there is off the charts compared to here. You don't even know the species you're dealing with is actually that species, or it's just a body tech that some other consciousness is occupying, alright? All of them, okay? So I'm very, very discerning of the off-world stuff. I don't trust it at all, alright? And the level of influence and going on and wanting their DNA tech in us, they've got a vested interest in this time, let alone all the corruption relative to purity, alright? So to me, what I'm wanting to get in is, you know, the gravitation. Like most people in their bodies, they just follow it. It just feels right. And plus all the temptation and stuff. If the invader overlay is, say, related to the abundance and the money system that harvests our energy and sends it off to a multiverse harvesting operation, then perhaps like having abundance now isn't going to be an indicator that you're aligned to the purity of the truth. It's buying into all that, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't be in poverty and stuff. We all deserve to have abundance and all that sort of stuff. But to me, it's a bit of an indicator that potentially right at the finish line, who have you been working with all along, alright? Okay. To me, like, there's multiverse at play. The universe isn't working in your favor. It's this violative apparatus that's massively got its hooks into us on levels most people can't even comprehend. And so to me, the whole corruption of the DNA lineages has been a massive setup to influence us now. It's been something that's gone in the past, but for me it was, I really got the appreciation of working out all this, you know, the uncertainty of being aligned to the Vrakaverse, right? The invader overlay versus the pure source. Like the path isn't clear, right? Like the invader sort of aspects, they need our energy to have existence sort of thing, right? So what I've been able to do is splice up the actual variable of how massive right now the setting us up for corruption failure right now is, because all that invader DNA and cross-pollination with invader sort of things that is in us is what is at play on a bigger scale right now, right? And I've been putting this all into linguistics relative to an updated version of my sovereignty declaration. But just imagine, alright, all this has been going on, okay? All the violations, all the targeting, all the harvesting, all the pillaging, all the trauma in the past. You know, the Ayani massacre, I would need to get into that, but basically if the women wanted to survive and save their counterpart, masculine counterpart, then they had to wed an Anunnaki and breed corruption lineages, sort of thing, right? Relative to creating the Leviathan DNA tech, right? That the mass incarnates all incarnate into to be our leaders and stuff like that, right? But also it was about sabotaging our future, so we would have corrupt DNA in us to derail us and guide us to this, right? Because say, for instance, like if you're aligned to pure source, then alarms are set off that might be in the corrupt DNA in you that trigger very invasive and violative targeting and derailment in your life, right? Because you're a threat. Plus also the feeling of going to the pure source is very negative, right? The body tech in you kicks in as a safeguard for this system to maintain itself, right? So it's dark. I'm going to finish off, right? But this is the key. And this is where violation is your asset, and injustice anywhere is an injustice anywhere. And this is why it's been so massive, all the wiping and the derailment and the targeting, so we just don't get awareness of this. So just imagine you, this 3D being here, alright? You've been violated by all this, but you've never engaged the violation is your asset and calling all this stuff out. All it does is engage this aspect of you to be superior to all that stuff. So you, as an individual, calling your stuff out, doing the sovereignty declaration, might be, from my perspective, we are the variables that are taking all this multi-dimensional strength and apex anti-God level beings out, right? It is their violation that we're calling out, that all their shit they've done for 1 trillion years, they have to face now, right? So the big thing I feel right now is that hasn't been really appreciated is the volume of corrupt lineages that are in us all, that are steering us down a path to create the reality we're in at a bigger level, like we're buying into it with our tech, right? So I'll just go back to the other one quick. So the way I've set up my sovereignty declaration and my sessions and stuff, injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. Any of these multi-dimensional beings that have messed with you anywhere in the last 1 trillion years, because we go very broad, big scale, 1,000 D in 1 trillion years, everything in between that that's done anything like this is vulnerable. So that's where I've been gone after so much and stuff and all that. But I just want you to actually feel that, right? And just feel how much untapped potential is in your lineages and your DNA body and your soul because of all the stuff that might have been done in the past. And so that's how we take this apparatus down, right? And I'm not going to show that crossover image, but it's not about anything else other than you, right? What is the potential in you, okay? So this is a bit of a shorter one for me. It's dark now. I got through with the main parts. I hope this is just really rich of appreciating the concepts of how much potential is in you and how much untapped lays dormant, right, because of inaction and stuff like that, okay? And I hope this helps you really press on and push through a lot of the barriers, maybe the resistance, and maybe seek me out if you're really serious, because it's different when you go through it with me, alright? The way I do it. And all the allies and people that you care about are victims of all this potentially themselves, and you engaging this and doing this and appreciating the mechanics of all this, you might be the one that allows them to have a potential existence that they never knew that was possible. And Earth Mother, our source, and all of us have an existence that we all deserve, right? So I hope you get a lot from this. I hope this is very empowering. I really recommend going and watching the last few releases and stuff and putting it all together in your pattern recognition and see where you can go, right? So thanks for being here. I've made it until just before it got dark. I hope you get a lot from this. And until next time, the Brunda from Down Under, or the Brat from Down Under in Brunda mode, wishing you all the best, and I hope you get a lot from this. So until next time, keep rocking it, guys. We are so epic, and engage all that potential you have. Take care. Bye for now.
The sun is gonna keep on shining right at this on the horizon. My love for you will always keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright tonight. Oh yeah, my love for you is gonna keep on rising. The sun's gonna keep on shining right next to the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright. The sun's gonna keep on shining right next to the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be
swimming in December, heading for the city lights. 975, sharing each other, nearer than farther. Scent of the lemon drips from your eyes. We are the people that rule the world. What's running in every boy and girl? All rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.